An apple a day may have kept the doctor away, but an apple today isn't what it used to be. The uncomfortable truth is that nutritional value of fruits and vegetables have been steadily declining since the introduction of synthetic fertilizers to conventional farming practices. Prior to World War II, synthetic agricultural chemicals were very uncommon, but in 1995, more than 45 million tons of chemical fertilizers and 77 million pounds of synthetic pesticide were used in U.S. agriculture alone. 95% of crops in the United States are now produced with chemical fertilizers and pesticides. It has become so widespread that using toxic chemical fertilizers is now the conventional standard in farming. Nutrient-dense organic manure used to be the typical fertilizer. In comparison, chemical fertilizers today contain only a few mineral substances, principally nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. These fertilizers dissolve easily in the water that is present in soil. As a result, plants fertilized with chemical fertilizers are presented with large quantities of nutrients all at once, often in excess of their needs. Farmers who use chemical fertilizers often control erosion of topsoil through methods such as no-till planting, where weed-killing pesticides are used in place of plowing to prepare a field for planting. With chemical fertilizers, there is no attempt to influence soil structure or to encourage soil microorganisms, as there is in organic farming. How farmers manage the soil in this new conventional way affects the fertility of the soil, along with the soil dynamics and plant metabolism. This leads to differences in plant composition and nutritional quality in comparison to organic management. Soil that has been managed organically has more microorganisms. These microorganisms produce many compounds that help plants combine with soil minerals to make them more bioavailable to plant roots. A great example is iron. Many soil contains adequate amounts of iron, but in unavailable forms. Nitrogen from any kind of fertilizer affects the amount of vitamin C and nitrates, as well as the quantity and quality of protein produced by plants. When a plant is presented with a lot of nitrogen, it increases protein production and reduces carbohydrate production. Because vitamin C is made from carbohydrates, the synthesis of vitamin C is also reduced. Moreover, the increased protein that is produced in response to high nitrogen levels contains lower amounts of certain essential amino acids, such as lysine, and consequently has a lower quality in terms of human and animal nutrition. If there is more nitrogen than the plant can handle through increased protein production, the excess is accumulated as nitrates and stored predominantly in the green leafy part of the plant. Several kinds of fertilizers contain toxic heavy metals that enter the soil and are absorbed by plants. Phosphate fertilizers often are contaminated by cadmium. Also, trace mineral fertilizers and liming materials derived from industrial waste can contain a number of heavy metals. These heavy metals build up in the soil when these fertilizers are used year after year. As the soil becomes more contaminated, the crops grow on these soils also become more contaminated. When chemical nitrogen fertilizers are added to these soils, plants may absorb even more heavy toxic chemicals. Organic farmers only rarely use trace mineral fertilizers and virtually never use fertilizers produced from industrial wastes, which are the most contaminated. Estimates of the nutrient content of organic and conventional daily vegetable intakes were made, and the organic vegetables had higher amounts of all nutrients shown. For vitamin C in particular, 5 servings of the organic vegetables met the recommended daily intake of 75 milligrams for women and 90 milligrams for men, whereas the same vegetables produced conventionally failed to do so. Considering that the recommended intake for vitamin C has been raised twice in the last 30 years, it is possible that the difference seen here could have significant effects on public health. Using synthetic fertilizers, farmers today can grow 2 to 3 times as much grain, fruit, and vegetables on a plot of land as they could 50 years ago. However, this increase in bounty is linked with a decrease of nutritional quality. A study by Davis et al. Evaluated change in USDA nutrient content data for 43 garden crops between years 1950 and 1999. As a group, the 43 foods showed apparent statistically reliable declines for the 6 nutrients: protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, and ascorbic acid. Declines in the medians range from 6% for protein to 38% for riboflavin. Using USDA data, they found that broccoli, for example, had 130 milligrams of calcium in 1950. But in 1999, that number was only 48 milligrams. So we would have to eat almost 3 times the amount of broccoli to get the same amount of calcium? How did we get here? Our understanding is derived from the premise that farming industry's desire is to grow bigger vegetables faster. The very things that speed growth, selective breeding and synthetic fertilizers, decrease produce's ability to synthesize nutrients or absorb them from the soil. Thus, we are left with less nutritious food. Plants cultivated to produce higher yields tend to have less energy for other activities, like growing deep roots and generating phytochemicals, which are health promoting compounds like antioxidants. And conventional farming methods, such as close plant spacing and the application of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, often cause crops to absorb fewer nutrients and have unhealthy root systems, less flavor, and sometimes even make them more vulnerable to pests. In summary, new conventional synthetic fertilizers result in poor soil turnover and lack of microorganisms and nutrients. Other factors that may also affect plant composition and decreasing nutritional value are genetics, the environment, and post-harvest practices. Today, in order to achieve government-set recommended daily allowances of nutrients, more vegetables and fruits need to be consumed than in the past. An interesting way to look at it is that there is less nutrition per calorie consumed, which affects consumers in much the same way as monetary inflation. That is, we have more food, but it's worth less in terms of nutritional value. One way to get more nutrients is simply to eat more. Or you can turn to organic produce for more nutrient-packed snacks.